What is up, everybody? I am joined by Erik Barber today, one of the turkey killingest folks I know on the table in front of us. If you're watching on YouTube, or if you're not watching on YouTube, it's the same because these things are on the table in front of us. We've got a smattering of turkey decoys. The subject matter of today's 10-minute talk, turkey decoy tactics. When to use them, where to use them, how to use them, things to look for in a decoy. We're going to cover it all, Erik.
I love it. I think you did the perfect prelude into everything that we're going to hit on for this.
There's more than just plunking a decoy out and
much more.
Crossing your fingers, hoping for the best. If you are looking on YouTube, like I've got some like what I would consider more old school traditional decoys.
Yep.
What's funny is when I got these, pretty state of the art.
Right.
When I think about when I even started using like foam turkey decoys, it would be like the equivalent of using like blocks for ducks.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then you look at kind of
black garbage bags for Canada geese, you know.
Right.
That's the silo.
And now, you got these ones that are behind us here. We got a Jake decoy, we got a hen, we've got a strutter.
Yeah.
These are the ones where when I wake up from my nap, when that sun starts to hit me in the chest and I wake up from my nap, my heart stops because I see my
comes off.
I see my decoy. I'm like, oh, God, no, wait, I put that there.
Yeah, yep.
So, Erik, when, where, and how are you predominantly using your decoys? I know that's a lot right there. But.
Yeah. So my decoy tactics have kind of evolved over the years. When I first started turkey hunting, like when I say I grew up turkey hunting, like I grew up just going turkey hunting. It wasn't like it was a thing that we did just to pass the time. Mm-hmm. Now I'm at this stage of my, passion for turkey hunting where I actually look forward to it more than I even do like deer hunting.
I know.
So I say that by saying to kind of level set that like how I started is not how I'm finishing when it comes to like turkey hunting. So
your turkey journey has progressed and it's not over.
Yep. So like when I started, I remember my uncle had the pretty boy and the Primo's pretty boy and pretty girl or whatever they were called.
Something like that, yeah.
And like I had this huge giant sack of decoys and I'd walk out to the blind that I already had there and I'd put those in front of me every day, no matter what the conditions were, no matter what the bird behavior was in the area, no matter the timing of the season. Now, fast forward to kind of where I'm at now, it's a much more situational thing. So on the table, I have this Montana decoy. It's a super packable, ultralight, minimalistic decoy, which fits my hunting style. I do a lot of run and gun. That's primarily my hunt style when it comes to turkeys. Cover a lot of ground, run ridge tops. So therefore, I like a really lightweight, sleek decoy, which I know we'll get into kind of later on here. But I only run one decoy now, for the most part. And we can get into reasons why, but I think the big thing is I kind of prioritize situational use of decoys rather than like just stamp it, yes, I'm going to use a decoy on every hunt. Like the decoy's with me, what decoy comes with me changes, how I use it changes, and if I even use it at all, those are all kind of like considerations.
What so your style, like you said, more run and gun, more minimalist. So you're carrying a decoy less, and predominantly it looks like. Well, I guess we'll just go with what you've gone to today. I think we can transition back to some things that we've done in the past, which are still all very viable options.
100%.
So we're not saying like, we've graduated now, we found like the right thing to do.
Exactly.
But this is a Jake decoy, correct?
So this is a Montana Jake decoy, and just to add some context even to what you're talking about there, Mark, like we do have a strutter on the table. This is my strutter that I'll bring with me sometimes this Jake stays at home and sometimes I'll bring that strutter. Okay. So it's a moving target. Like this isn't the one thing I bring every single time. But we'll go into this Montana Jake decoy, and we'll kind of run through a couple things that I look for when it comes to decoys. I'm also very curious what your thoughts are on them as well, and what you've seen work. But a couple things that I think about using this one as an example are the positioning of the head and the posture of the decoy.
Yep.
So on this Jake, once it is set up, you can see that it kind of is in a position where the head is more upright, and the snood is like very short and just poking straight up. To me, that implies it's a more subordinate bird. If you ever watch a turkey when it comes into the decoys and it maybe gets spooked, let's say you have a tom committed and he's coming in and, maybe he flares off a blind or sees you move. What's the first thing he does when he gets spooked? He adjusts his posture. His snood goes from, if he was coming in strutting, maybe it was laid out over his beak.
Yep.
It shortens up and it goes into the upright position, and that's what this Jake has that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, this implies a very subordinate bird that an approaching tom thinks that he's got a chance to, tangle with them and run them off.
Whoop up on.
Exactly. He's going to steal that hen that he's hearing coming into the call.
Yep.
So I look for that a lot. I definitely like more of the snood that's in that position. I just feel like it's a body language thing that implies a lot of the bird's mood. This is to me, when I look at this decoy, that implies that it is it's not aggressive, it's subordinate, it can be bullied and pushed around. So as an approaching tom, I've got the confidence, I'm going to run this thing off and come in and see what's going on.
But he also, this, subordinate, non-dominant bird, also has the hen that he wants.
Exactly.
Which is not okay.
Exactly. Yep. So posture, body language, those are two really, really big things with it.
That snood thing, I hadn't really put much thought into that until you mentioned it. And I was like, and then I've been, as I watch, turkey videos, because I do that in my spare time, I'm like, yeah, man, those dominant toms that are coming in strutting, gobbling, that are committed, dude, that snood is hanging way out.
Yep, exactly. And they do a lot of even positioning with their heads, too, when they're approaching. Like, for somebody that's new to turkey hunting and looking for, to maybe learn more about that body language, I would suggest just watching turkey hunting videos and seeing how different birds respond to different decoys, different calling scenarios, because that body language tells you as the hunter how to adjust your tactic. So maybe you're calling a lot, and when you every time you call, that bird, he just gets more aggressive and he starts coming in, but then he stops. Well, that's a good telltale sign to keep calling. Or maybe it's vice versa, which is reason to lay off.
Yep.
So.
In contrast to a decoy like this, have you ever seen situations where he's so unthreatened by this bird, he doesn't commit? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've seen in that situation is just a lack of interest. In
general.
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say it's ever like a decoy thing. I do think that sometimes, and this is where we get into different behaviors of different birds, I think sometimes you'll see, you'll always hear somebody say, like, man, if I would have had the decoy, I would have had him. Or, like, if I would have had a different decoy, I would have had him.
Yep.
And that's an impossible thing to ever understand going into the woods. I think a lot of what you need to think about when you're considering what decoy to bring is what time of year it is and what the birds are typically doing during that time frame. If it's early in the season, birds are grouped up and you've got you're hunting like a flock type situation, well, maybe you want to bring the Jake, a hen, maybe as much as 2 hens.
Right.
If it's late in the season, you're hunting thick timber where visibility is kind of limited, and you're more just trying to cover a lot of ground. Maybe that's a situation where you bring one like super packable decoy or no decoy at all.
Right.
There really isn't a one size fits all approach to decoys.
No, I wish there was. It would be a lot less complex. What when you're setting your decoy up, and maybe we'll start with kind of like the hill country that I know you typically like to hunt a lot of that. Where are you putting that decoy? And at what point do you want the turkey to see that decoy?
Yep. So what I typically do with that from a placement standpoint, if I'm hunting hill country, rolling hills or anything like that, I like to get them on the spine of the ridge, or if I know that the turkey's on. If I know the turkey is on the opposite side of the ridge, I'll actually position it a little bit on the leeward side of the ridge that's nearest me. Mm-hmm. That way I don't have to expose myself and go up to the ridge top. The other thing that does is in hill country, you'll see a lot of times where a bird will, what I call periscope over the ridge. You'll see him come up over the ridge and just his head comes over the ridge line and he's just looking. Really doesn't give you an opportunity to shot unless you are super opportunistic. But if he sees that decoy, that gives him the confidence to, okay, I was just going to check this, but now that I have this visual aid here, now I'm actually going to commit. So that's one thing I've seen probably the most success in, is not putting it up on the very tippy top spine of the ridge, but actually more maybe on that upper fourth on the opposite side that the bird is on. That's assuming that you struck one up, you know where he is, and you can get there.
Yeah.
If you don't know where they are, then I do like kind of getting it up on the top of the ridge.
Okay, interesting. One thing that I would think, or at least, what I've done also, by keeping it to where he can't see the decoy until you can also see him, it prevents them from going, okay, yeah, I see the decoy. I know what's going on. Yeah, that bird's there. I don't have to come any further.
Yep.
They've kind of sorted things out to where if they have to keep looking,
Yep,
they're going to keep looking and hopefully be within range.
And with that, a lot of times I run decoys. My turkey decoys like a bow hunter. Somebody that would be bow hunting turkeys would run them. And for someone who might not be familiar, when you're bow hunting turkeys, especially when you're out of a blind, your decoys might be as close as 5-6 yards away.
Okay.
Because you want those birds to come all the way in. When you're bow hunting, you're in the confines of a blind where you can draw, you can get away with that movement. The reason I say I adapt that same kind of strategy for like a shotgun hunting, no blind approach, is because in open timber, I don't want that bird to see the decoy and get hung up. If he gets hung up and he's 30 yards away from the decoy, my decoy's 10 yards away from me, which puts that bird at 50, still in range. I can still knock him down.
Gotcha.
So I always, would lean more towards having the decoy closer rather than further.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. What about facing towards you, facing away from you?
Yep. I like facing towards me for, again, that same kind of reason. I feel like a lot of times, and this kind of goes back to when I did more bow hunting for turkeys, I would always have them. This strutting decoy I actually used a lot when I would be bow hunting turkeys. I'd face the strutter directly towards me, and I'd have maybe a hen laid down with them, which, implies that this tom is with this hen. He's breeding that hen. So another tom that might enter the field, a lot of times that would be a field situation. When that other tom, the aggressor, kind of comes in and sees that kind of triggers, like, you're either going to pull that bird right in or you're probably not going to get him, because it's a very aggressive, it's a breeding scenario that you're replicating. But when I was doing that, I always had the strutting decoy facing directly at the blind, because I found a lot of times what they would do is they'd come in, they'd kind of get in between the blind and face that decoy head on. They would J-hook in front of them. They oftentimes would be strutting. Once you get them strutting away from you, facing the decoy, that bird's not going to see you because he has his fan blocking his field of view. That's when you draw. That's the biggest challenge in bow hunting is drawing when you have something as close with as good of eyesight as a turkey, you really need to get away with that movement, and I'll just use their fan to their demise, and that's kind of your opportunity.
Yeah, I do the same thing, and predominantly the vast majority of my turkey hunting has been with a shotgun, but I'm like, well, if I can set that up to where that bird essentially, number one, I think it annoys them that bird isn't paying attention to them. They're like, wait a minute, hey, I'm over here, they might be gobbling, and that bird or your decoy hasn't turned around.
Yep.
And so then they have to confront the decoy. And again, it can just give you that little extra edge where, maybe you get caught and you don't have your gun up or something like that. And you can just, get in position and hopefully make that shot.
Exactly.
So, what about, a lot of people are hunting farm country.
Yep.
What are your decoy strategies there? Generally more open, flatter, birds can see your decoys from a long ways out.
Yep.
How do you adjust for that?
So, flat farm country also lends itself better to scouting.
Okay.
And by that I mean you can spend a couple. Let's say you're going to hunt Saturday morning, Sunday morning. You just have the weekend to hunt. Maybe it's a spot that you live nearby, and if so, what I would do in that situation is drive past that field. Maybe leave 20 minutes earlier for work. Drive past that field, see what the birds are doing. And kind of use whatever intel you can glean from that to your advantage. So what I mean there is like you're again observing things like behavior and how the flock interacts with one another. If there are turkeys in the field, maybe Just as an example, maybe you see one tom with a bunch of hens, and that tom is always strutting. He's always kind of running the show. Maybe you've seen him breed a hen or something. So that means that tom is ruling the roost, no pun intended. So in that case, what I would do is then that Saturday morning, I would probably bring in something like this strutter with a hen to kind of replicate that.
Yep.
And use that against them. But now on the flip side, one thing I've seen a lot of as well is, maybe there's a big flock, there's one or two toms in it, there's maybe a handful of jakes and a bunch of hens. It sounds counterintuitive because I think in like the big game world, like specifically the whitetail world, people think like a big mature buck is the one that owns the place, right? Mm-hmm. That's not always the case in the turkey world. A lot of times those jakes are very aggressive. You'll actually see jakes run off a tom from a field.
Right, just a pack of hooligans.
Exactly. So monitor that behavior. If that's what's going on, definitely don't go in with a super aggressive decoy. Mm-hmm. In that case, I'm probably going to go in with just a hen and hope that I can get that lone tom or maybe that lone pair of toms that comes into the field. They're never strutting because they want to be where the action is, but they don't want to be by those jakes. That's where a lone hen, in my opinion, is kind of the go-to strategy because the bird will just feel a little bit more comfortable. It's an antisocial bird, so you don't want to give it a big group setting to walk into.
Yep. Yeah, I think decoys are really important, at least in my experience hunting farm country birds, open field birds, because there's generally less room for you to hide. Like I would almost argue that they're more critical in that environment because a bird can see, like they can tell, like, well, wait a minute, there's this sound.
Yep.
I'm hearing this sound, but I should be able to see some turkeys, And I also like the strutter for that environment because you see a tom and versus say like something that a feeding representation, right? That bird's on the move, like he might be like pecking around and going, but a strutter is more stationary. They might stand there for, you've probably seen birds strut in the same spot for hours, right? So it doesn't look out of place that bird has kind of stayed in that location for a long period of time. It's less conspicuous, and like I said, when there's I've hid in just the tiniest little pocket of trees or finger of trees. To where, like, if you didn't have a decoy out, I feel like they'd be like, well, that doesn't make sense. I should be able to see that bird.
Right.
Something's wrong. I don't like it. I'm out
Exactly.
of here.
And you just hit on strut zones a little bit. And that's something that, you might find a strut zone. A strut zone can be anywhere. It can be on the high point in the middle of a field. It can be on that secluded little, farm road that accesses a field. Or maybe it's a spot where, in a big wood setting where they went in and did some logging and there's just a natural opening in the timber. All three of those are like perfect scenarios for a bird to just sit there and strut. And whenever you find something like that, I'll typically just set up there, and especially if it's more of the latter, a big wood setting, that might be a spot where I just hang out in the middle of the day with no decoy, and you just kind of wait to see if a bird strikes up and starts, gobbling, or if one just naturally walks into there.
Yeah. Those are definitely spots to look for where turkeys want to be there. They might be naturally heading to that point where you can intercept them, and they're also very much used to hearing other turkeys in that spot. So, you're kind of putting all the things in your favor there. Okay, we're not getting into turkey sign, Erik, but you brought up strut zones. I think maybe we'll have to do a second podcast on just turkey sign. We'll tease it with this one. Other than seeing birds strutting in one of these spots, what kind of sign could you look for on the ground that'd be like, oh, birds have been strutting here?
I actually found some of this weekend.
Ooh.
So it's... I
saw a strutter this morning. Very much excited.
They are doing their thing. So at the time of this recording, it is March 15th. We're about a month away from opening day in Wisconsin. I was in this weekend pulling a trail camera off a piece of public property around here and found a bunch of turkey tracks. And what it looked like just by looking at the tracks, I was like, man, that's got to be a bunch of hens. There's got to be a tom in here somewhere. After kind of walking around, and this is something that I found in snow, but you can also identify this in dirt or just,
probably sandy
soil, exactly. But wing drags.
Yeah.
So for anyone that might not know what that means, that is when a tom pops into strut. his wings actually bow out a little bit. His wing tips point down, and they actually drag the ground. That's why when you see when you shoot a tom and you look at his wing feathers, oftentimes they're filed down, and that's from him strutting and dragging those wing tips across the ground. So that's always a really telltale sign that you've got a tom in the area. Another one, though, is just identifying the size of the tracks. A tom is going to have a much bigger track. If you find a tom track side by side to a hen track, it's jarring the difference. Like they just have much bigger feet. They look like dinosaurs.
I mean, you see some; they're darn near the size of your hand.
Yep. So size of track is a big thing to also kind of be mindful of.
Yep.
So.
Yep. When I first started using decoys, it was intuitive to me. I was like, well, all I need is the hen decoy because I'm making hen sounds. And also I was like, well, I don't want to, I want to make it easy for them. Like, oh, yeah, I can go in and get this hen that I'm looking for. And I had mixed results. Like sometimes they would come in, but sometimes they'd stop and see that hen. I'm like, oh, great, they saw it. And then they would just be like, okay, now you come with me, which I later on learned. I'm like, oh, that's the natural way of things. The hens actually go seek out the toms. So I would have, like I said, mixed results. It definitely worked sometimes, but sometimes I was getting frustrated because I'm like, man, I was calling, he was coming, he sees the decoy, and now it's almost like he's less interested. So something to think about.
Exactly. Yeah, it's there really isn't we kind of talked about it. There isn't a perfect answer to, like, if you're going to bring one decoy, what decoy to bring. I always kind of lean towards having a Jake decoy, something like this Montana decoy. There's a bunch of different, like this Montana decoy is just an example. DSD makes it really good. Half strut Jake, or it might be a 3/4 strut Jake, where it's kind of has that same head posture with the snood pointed up. That's another decoy that I really like. Anything that kind of fits that mold is kind of where I gravitate towards if I'm going to bring one decoy.
If you're going to bring one.
Yep,
yeah, that's kind of like the do-all, safe, like, it's going to hopefully get you where you need to be. But yeah, I mean this decoy that you got here, super cool. I've got an avian here, really good realistic decoy. Like I said, the DSDs. I mean, there's a lot of great decoys. I mean, we're pretty fortunate in the decoy world right now. From like I said, just the foam, paint chipping off the head. One that I started with. That I will say, it did not work.
Exactly. Yep.
So we've covered postures. We've covered. What about color? What do you like in the color of a Tom or Jake decoy head?
Yeah. So, I personally like a little bit of more of a mix. So, like if you're watching on YouTube, this Tom here has a really white and really red head. That avian has actually a pretty good, like, there's a lot of blues in there too. That does a really good job. This Montana is much more red. I like a little bit more of a mix. Head color changes based on mood when it comes to turkeys. When it's more white, like this Tom, that is, and again, I'm saying white, like I'm looking at just the head color. Obviously, the snood and the wattles are red, but when that head is super, super white, that's when you know you've got a very aggressive bird.
I'd say white means fight.
Exactly.
Exactly. Or at least fully committed, in my opinion.
For sure.
When I see that head turn white, I'm like, it's on, boys.
It's on, exactly. The red, on the other hand, I think is a little bit more submissive. So again, it just kind of and you're seeing decoys out there now where you can actually change the color of the head. So that's something for people that might be kind of on the fence with this stuff. If you're listening to this and going to actually like go out and buy your first decoy or maybe upgrade your system, that might be something to look for. I can't recall what brand it is specifically, but I do know that there's decoys out there where you can change the head coloring.
I mean, that's a pretty easy way to do a little A/B testing, and it could be something on a particular day that I don't know. I've never done that before.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. Bing, bang, boom.
One thing we didn't get into is stake height, decoy stake.
Yes. You got a stake right here.
Yep. So I like this stake a lot on this Montana decoy, but it is not the perfect decoy stake because it doesn't exist.
Right.
a decoy stake, in my opinion, is super important for a couple reasons. One, you want something that is going to encourage range of motion on it. So if there's a light breeze, maybe it kind of spins a little bit. In an ideal world, your decoy stake has an adjustable, like a telescoping height. I don't know that exists. If it doesn't, and there's a decoy manufacturer listening to it, I would love to see that. You can steal my idea. I would more than happily pay money for that.
Right.
And the reason that I like something that adjusts in height is, so let's say early, mid-April, the woods are pretty bare at that point. The fields are pretty, if it is a planted field, it probably hasn't even popped up. And if it did, it's very short. So you can get away with these shorter decoy stakes. However, kind of later in May, once things green up, you're maybe dealing with a hay field or an alfalfa field that's 8 inches high. It's really easy for this stake to go into the ground, maybe 3 inches, and you've got grass covering up half your decoy.
Yeah.
So what I'll do in later in the season, I take an old busted arrow and I stick it in my backpack or my turkey vest.
Yep.
That, in my opinion, is kind of like the ultimate for late season hunting because it gets it up there a little bit higher. The whole point of a decoy is it needs to be visual, and if it's too low to the ground.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure we've seen turkeys, either naturally or even killed turkeys and brought them through some stuff where all you can see is, when you finally do get to see them, all you can see is just that head,
Exactly.
And so, like you said, this is a visual game. This is a visual attraction. They got to be able to see it for it to work. And
Yep.
I don't think I give turkeys a lot of credit, but I don't give them the credit to know exactly how tall another turkey is or what that turkey might be standing on in that tall grass to get it up visible. But another really good point, and just a nice little tip there. Your decoy will likely come with a stake that's very usable, but if you got an old arrow, they're lightweight, they're strong, they're durable, and it makes a heck of a decoy stake. And if you're the type of person that maybe lost your decoy stake, there you go. Now you got one.
I was just going to say my go-to decoy stake has become an arrow, forcibly, not by choice, on several occasions.
Right. Exactly. Well, Erik, I was afraid of this. We are way over 10 minutes here. I knew it was going to happen.
Yep.
Frankly, I'm glad it happened. This is a great, fun topic. Hopefully, the listeners out there found this helpful. We want to hear from you. What are your decoy tactics? We're here to learn as well, and hopefully, some of this information helps you hear a sound like this spring. Excellent.
Flopping. That was the flopping.
I heard. No, I thought it was very realistic. Thanks everybody for listening. Let us know, what are your decoy tactics? What's working for you? Good luck this spring. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.